welcome back to the Mission for More podcast. I'm your host, Courtney, the face behind Her Mind on Mission on social media. And today I will be interviewing Emily, who I found online, but she actually is a neighbor nearby in my hometown. And I'm so excited to have connected with her and just her heart to really explain to people that Jesus will meet you where you're at. And once you see him interwoven in the mundane parts of your life, you can't unsee him, which drove her to then be chronically offline for 2026. And she's still navigating it, but she has so much wisdom and insight on this topic for what the Lord has already revealed to her. And I can't wait for her to give some of that to each of us today through this podcast. Welcome, Emily. Okay, we're giggling already, and I feel like we've already had a great conversation before jumping into this. So, Emily, I'm just so excited to have you on the podcast and to be talking about what's on your heart. So, I'm just going to let you take it away and tell me what happened over the holidays, coming back on socials, and where that brought you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is so special. This is my first time being on a podcast, so I'm excited to see where this takes us. I remember it was like mid-December. I was kind of sitting on my couch mindlessly scrolling, as we all tend to do, and I was just kind of finding myself in this state of mind where, I was comparing a lot, but I was just very disassociated from reality. And I have two kids and I stay at home with them all day long. One is a 1.5-year-old and one is 5. So one asks a lot of questions while the other one is just busy and needs my attention. And I was just on my phone, distracted. And I kind of caught myself in the middle because I was getting pretty frustrated pretty easily. And it just felt like this holy awareness where I stepped back and I could kind of perceive myself and perceive the situation. And it just was not something I enjoyed seeing. And so I kind of just told myself, this is my phone. It's the phone that's the problem, because I notice when I am not on my phone, I am more attentive, I am more patient, and I just didn't have any of that available. And so I remember that day I told myself, come Christmas time, I think it was the 23rd, I was going to take a break, at least for the holidays. I typically do that anyway, but taking a break for the holidays and just seeing where that leads. And so I did that. I bricked my phone. The brick, if you don't know what that is amazing. And it is something, it's a tool, a physical tool that just really does help you stick to your guns. You can't really click out. And so that's really nice. It's something you have to physically touch to unlock your phone from all the apps that you want blocked. So that has been a saving grace for me. And so I decided to brick it out and hide the brick for a few days. I gave it to my husband, had him set it aside, and I said, I don't want to know where it is. And so I bricked all of my social media.
I love
I,
that.
yeah, it was what I needed. I needed that discipline. It's too easy on your phone to be able to tap away the time limits. And it's rough that I don't have the willpower to do that, but it is what it is. And I'm trying to be better at it. But yeah, so my husband hid that. And I spent the holidays, which is easy to do, spending the holidays without your phone, because you have well, not everybody, but most people are with their family or with others during that time. And so it was busy for me, so it was easy to stay off my phone. And I remember the 27th rolled around and my husband was off for the rest of the week. And I was sitting there, we had already eaten, and I was about to make my coffee, and I was sitting on the couch and I was like, okay, we've done well. I haven't really thought about my phone, but we'll, think about it, and maybe I'll get back online later and see what everyone else was up to. And I just remember there was a verse, and I cannot remember what it is for the life of me right now, but there was a verse that pretty much said that it was talking about better one hand open than striving with two. And I was just like, yeah, no, I think the Lord is really pressing into me to stay quiet a little longer. And so I just stayed off, and I ended up staying off until the beginning of January, which felt so good. It was so peaceful and it was so nice. And it got to a point where I desired to be on my phone very little, which was crazy because I do create content semi as like a hobby, but also for brands and things. And so that's something that's always on my mind. And it was just so nice and weightless to be able to live without that distraction. And it sounds so dramatic, but it was so life-changing for me, and my husband saw me being different. My kids saw me being different. I remember my daughter sat in my lap and she just looked at me and said, "Mom, I love you so much." And it was because it was a day full of like happy things, reading books, just sitting on the floor playing with them. And while it's good to let them be independent in their own ways, it was nice because I felt like I desired that connection. Whereas before, it almost felt forced to like make time to sit with your kids. And it was just this part that I was just like, okay, I want to sit with them in the bedroom and we'll see where that takes us. And it was just cool to see the dynamic shift from being forced to just this natural state of being. And I was just like mind blown at how social media and the internet just steals that away from you. And you don't notice it. It's very subconscious and it's
Yeah.
very subtle. And it hurt to know that that's something that I have been living with for so long. My daughter's 5.5, and I've been on social media providing content or creating it just for fun for that long. And yeah, it just really opened my eyes to how big of a distraction it was and how much it was really affecting not just myself, but the people in my life. And so, yeah, I just decided that 2026, I didn't really have a word or any type of real plans for what I wanted this year to look like, but that kind of hit me and I was like, "You know what? My desire for this year is really to be chronically offline, and that doesn't mean I'll be fully offline. I don't know what that looks like, honestly, but be in surrender as to what being online looks like and really seeking wisdom and discernment before I enter into
Yeah.
that space." And so that's sort of what led me to that place, and I'm in the waiting process for sure. I'm still figuring out what that looks like for me, but it so drastically changed my life. And I will always recommend getting offline to anybody, whether you're a content creator or just consuming, like you said, mindlessly trying to numb out a little bit because life is hard and life is noisy. But I think we forget sometimes that the internet is just as noisy, if not more, in a different way. But we think numbing out to that helps us, provides relief at some point. And it's nice to be able to find that distinction and just recognize that maybe that's not the answer. But yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
where it
that's so
started and kind of
good.
where I'm at.
I love it. So you said a couple of things that I want to touch on. Number one, that you bricked your phone. So I will leave a
Mhm.
link for anybody who has not heard of the brick, so that they could be able to grab that because it is something that will block you from your apps. I want to get it too,
Oh, so good.
because I know I put time limits on everything. Yeah, I'm like, if I'm not done doing something, I will just ignore the time limit because I want to finish what I'm doing. And that frustrates me because then I know I'm like, I don't even know how far past the time limit I have gone now. And I know that
Hmm.
sometimes it can be excessive. And so I love taking too. And if I'm taking a picture, there's so many times I will go and like upload it right away. But even today, I was like taking some pictures and I'm like, I'm not uploading anything until I have a quiet moment where it's not like in the middle of doing things with my kids. Like take the picture, then set the phone down and keep doing
Hmm.
the things. And then later on, I can upload everything and share. I do want to encourage people, and that's my heart. And I think as a content creator, it becomes really difficult because you're like, oh, I want to share this because I know it could be encouraging to somebody else. And I was actually encouraging people to be offline. So I was like, I'm not
Yes.
going to interrupt my offline activities to encourage people to be offline. I will wait until my window of time to be back online and then I'll get off again. And it felt so much better to do that. So I highly encourage people to get the brick or to really just make sure that you have an accountability partner or talk to your husband or something. Like if you say you're going to be off your phone, be off your phone. And
Hmm.
then you also mentioned like getting frustrated or just like feeling different with your kids when the phone was around versus when it wasn't. And I think that is so important. I heard it on a podcast. I think it was last week on a parenting podcast where, she had said something to her child like, hey, if mom's ever mean to you, like this is how I want you to respond to me so that I know that I'm being mean to you. And I love that open dialogue. And she was on her phone and her son had asked her something and she kind of snapped at him. And later he was like, hey, earlier when I came to talk to you and you were busy on your phone, you weren't being really nice to me. And it really hit her. And there's so many times where I am trying to finish something and I'll be like, hold on a second, instead of being like, yeah, baby, like I normally
Mhm.
would when my kids come up to me. And I don't like that. And that's something that I'm working on, is making sure, like I told my husband, it's like probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now. I'm like, when they say mom, like if I'm doing something on my phone, I immediately flop the phone down. Yes. And like look at them, because I want them to see that they are a priority. Because even if we are doing something on our phones in that moment and we want to finish it and we tell them just to wait, because kids can practice patience, that's fine. If it is
Mhm.
all the time that we do that, that tells them, even though I say that it's God first, then daddy, and then you, my actions aren't showing that. And I think
Yeah.
when kids grow up and they see that I'm told this thing, but my mom actually does this thing, it leaves a middle ground of confusion and like contradiction. And that's where a lot of the times kids grow up and they're like, well, my mom didn't mean what she said, so I can go and do whatever I want. And I don't want that example for
Mhm.
my children. So I love that you touched on so much of that. I want to go back to where you said like you just had that Holy Spirit moment where it was like, wow, I need to get offline. What did that look like as a conversation with your husband once the holidays ended? I know you kind of talked about it a little bit, but how did you decide like what activities to do instead of being on your phone?
Yeah, pretty much it just meant filling my hands with other my house had never been cleaner. And I had never wanted to participate in so many hobbies and actually started to do them, which was fun because I don't know, I think I sort of outsourced my creativity to online. And for some reason, it was very tunnel vision. It was very like, this is where it is because this is where I've been creating. But then I had these desires to like knit or to photo journal or like all of these other things. And I would want to do them and I genuinely want to do them, but I never went out and actually started buying the things to make them or to watch the YouTube videos. And I just sort of outsourced that way. I sort of just replaced with things that filled me with that creative juice, you know what I mean? To do things that I've always wanted to do. I started writing letters again, which I think is so special and so intentional. And it's something that this year I want to be better at, just being really intentional, pray over it at the beginning of the month and then send out a letter to somebody who the Lord brings to my heart. I used to do that when I made sourdough bread. I would make 2 loaves every time and I would pray over who I would make the second one for. Sometimes I didn't know who until the day I delivered it. And so I love doing that sort of thing with an open hand. But just like honestly just filling my hands with things that were productive or that filled my cup in a way that filled others, if that makes sense. And some of that was just sitting down mindlessly, writing things out. I started my Substack because of it. I enjoyed writing, my entire life. I've always been a creative to some degree. But yeah, I think just making sure that the moments where I thought I needed to be on my phone, I was doing something different and filling my hands with something different. And a lot of that looked like keeping my house clean or sitting outside with my kids or things like that. My husband, it was one of those things where I just kind of started talking to him authentically about it as we went to bed, just opening up about how I felt every single day. So it was little by little, but he knows me best and he knows the things that I struggle with online, and so I think he was happy to see that I was pulling away a little bit cuz you can definitely tell when it's a mental struggle for you. And so I don't know, I felt different,
Yeah.
drastically different after a couple weeks, and I think he could tell too. And after that was when he started bricking his phone and started putting that into practice, and we both just started really prioritizing that, and it's so much easier to do it when you have someone to do it with. And so that's been a lot of
Yeah.
fun to be able to practice that together and keep each other accountable, but in like a loving way that doesn't feel hard. But yeah, that's sort of the way that went about and sort of the way that I decided to delegate that time, I guess.
Yeah. So you're on Substack, I see. Are you going to be creating content? Like, do you have any limitations or any even hesitancy like from the Lord right now before you do these things, or you're like, when I feel like I can write, I will write? How are you managing that?
Yeah, so it's funny because it took me a while to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. I've always loved chatting, like podcast style, but I've never really felt like that was my calling. And so I think it's fun because this has so many outlets to create. You can podcast, you can link videos, you can share videos, you can do voiceovers, you can do pictures, you can just write, like, and there's no format that you have to stick to. Whereas other platforms, there's algorithms and things you need to kind of stick to if you want it to be seen. And for me, this sort of felt like a fresh start where I didn't necessarily care if people saw it or not, and
Yeah.
just kind of feel like I could surrender it from the ground up and hold my hands open and just be like, you know what, I love to create, and that really does fill me with so much joy, and it makes me feel, I don't know, it just makes me feel like me. That's the most me thing is to be able to create to some capacity. And I feel like through photos or videos or being able to speak words that are beautiful sometimes that flow well together. It's just something that's a part of who I am. And so finding a place and a platform where that didn't feel like there was any pressure behind it was so refreshing. And I love the long format because I'm so tired of these 7-second swipe ups. I'm tired of it. It makes me mad that I lost that ability to be able to sit down and focus, and so I'm so glad that that's making a comeback. But when it comes to creating content on there, I've just told myself there's a lot of people who do structures where they do like 2 blogs within a week, do 1 podcast a month. And I thought about that and I just went, at the end of the day, I don't know that I want a structure, at least at this point in time. I kind of just want it to be an outlet and a source of the overflow of what I'm learning and surrendering. And at this point in time, a lot of that, I have a lot of thoughts. And so it's just coming out as I write it. But I really am trying to hold it with open hands. I don't have the app on my phone, so it's very intentional to go on my computer and make that time. So it is harder to commit to that because I am with my kids, and being on my computer is just so much different than being on my phone in front of my kids. So, yeah, I think it's not structured. It's very hands open, and I'm open to any topic that the Lord sort of brings up and kind of ignites some sort of flame towards speaking on. And sometimes it's very lighthearted, sometimes it'll be deep. I know that. I've had thoughts of things that I will be talking about, and those go very deep, but I don't know. Yeah, there's no pressure behind it, and I think that's what I love about it the most. Is it makes me feel like I don't have to commit uh, time into it, except for the time that I feel like is delegated towards that.
Yeah. I also do not have the Substack app on my phone. I have it on my computer, and I also love Substack. You and I are very similar in the creative realm, and it's funny because when I wrote, I remember when I was writing the first Substack, and I was like, wait a second, before I like do this, I want to make sure with my husband that he's cool that I'm like adding
Mhm.
this other platform because I know that
Yeah.
he knows me the way that you said,
Yeah.
your husband knows you, and I was just like, I don't I want him to tell me if this is ridiculous or this is too much. And so he actually had gone downstairs and I was up in the room and I'm like, I'm just going to call him really quick. It'll be
Mhm.
faster. So I called him and he's like, yeah, because he was just a floor downstairs. And I'm like, hey, this is just like so pressing on my heart. And I need to ask you right now, like, I'm planning on publishing a Substack, which is kind of similar to like a blog, but also has the Instagram podcast, all of it combined.
Mhm.
And I really feel like this is going to be a platform where I can be creative and be free. And I wrote this post and I want to post it, but I wanted to get your permission first. And he was like, please do it. And I literally just started crying because
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time outside of like podcasting, obviously. Um, but the last time that I got to write long form content like that, and I used to blog, and it just felt so good to, because podcasting is wonderful, but it is more so like a conversation versus writing. You can add the words that flow and you can think
Yes.
about it and edit it. And there's just something like telling a story through words that just captivates my heart in a way that I can't explain. And so once I found that, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then I saw you had one. And so I was so excited to be able to connect because I love talking to readers who get it. Like
Yeah.
I was you talking about like the 7-second format. My daughter had gotten a book for Christmas and it was written in like old English. And when I first read the first chapter, I was like, oh my goodness, I feel like my IQ is like lower. I'm like stumbling over these words and I'm like a pretty good reader. And so I'm like, this is because our brains are so
Yeah.
used to trending songs and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm so excited to read this book with her. And by like chapter 3, I was like reading so much more fluently because I was so aware of it. And I'm like, I
Yes.
can't scroll. I don't want to scroll. I want to have my brain working like a normal brain, the way that God intended, and not in these, short snippets. And it's just been so freeing to kind of break free from the scroll. So
Mm.
let's shift a little bit and talk about, I want your perspective and encouragement for other people. Why do you think that we should be, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to be chronically offline, but why do you think that we should be so careful about scrolling, and what does that do with our relationship with the Lord?
Well, I feel like with scrolling, it creates this desire to like seek stimulation. And I feel like we miss a whole lot of what's happening in the present when we are seeking that constant feeling of stimulation. We also lose the ability to actually feel that great joy in a really good stimulating moment when we're constantly being fed. And I that just really becomes such a distraction when it comes to your physical life with your physical relationships, but also with the Lord for sure. I think also, I create content with the means of bringing it back to the Lord. And for a long time, that was my ministry, quote unquote ministry. And I really did feel like I was doing the right things and adding the value and stuff. But when I really stepped back, I sort of noticed that I was still very algorithmic when it came to my thought process on how to create the content, who it was going to reach, and if it was worth my time to create, and things like that. And I just felt like those should not be my thoughts in a ministry. It should be purely prayer, open hand, and the creative process, sure, may take some work to produce whatever it is I'm producing, but it should still feel like an overflow. It shouldn't feel hard. You shouldn't feel scared in terms of how it's going to be viewed or in terms of the numbers that it receives. I always found that the times where I was most spirit led in a video, those were the videos, and I felt weird posting them because I'm like, no, I didn't edit it right, or I didn't write the right caption underneath. And they were the ones that took off every single time. And so it was just the Lord really gently hugging me and letting me know, hey, like, I've got it. And there's a reason that I'm having you talk about this, or there's a reason that I want you to show up, even if it seems so mundane or so silly. There's a reason for it. And I think we lose sight of the fact that we have a life that the Lord designed for us to live out and for others to see it. And it doesn't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be an aesthetic. It doesn't have to fit a mold. It's something that is unique to us. And that's why it's so particular for others to be able to see and like gain some inspiration from or be encouraged by, because it is different, but somehow so relatable at the same time. And I feel like those are the things that bring us together so much. But when it comes to sitting down and constantly scrolling and seeing everyone else's point of view or hearing all the other opinions, it taints this part of us that is original and that is authentic and that has that connection, that vertical relationship with the Lord. It just sort of makes it too much like everyone else's, and we blur the lines and we get distracted and we lose ourselves. I lost myself so many times online, and that is why it's funny, I tell anybody on my online space that they've watched me in real time battle this addiction, because I will be like, okay, I'm gone, and then I'm gone for like a week, and then I come back because I felt fueled, and and refined and ready to share things that I was excited to share about. And I've just come to realize that being online isn't inherently wrong or bad, but it is so important to have discernment and to seek wisdom when and how to use social media and to use that space and be in that space. And I think part of that is more so if you're going to be online as a Christian content creator. I think a lot of that needs to be reassessed all the time and prayed over all the time, and just something you always have to sort of like step back and be able to see and adjust and tailor towards your relationship with the Lord instead of searching after numbers. I I don't know, I'm just so
Yeah.
tired of being someone else, trying to be someone else so other people like me. And I
Yeah.
think the Lord has just really shown me that, at least given me my self-worth back. He showed me very much that my worth was what I was producing. It was found in what I was producing. It was found in people who I was following, who I was connecting with, but we weren't really in like relationships with. And so the dynamic always felt off and never super fulfilling. And it just brought me back to,
Yeah.
this is parasocial, and I need more the physical, real fueling things in my life. And scrolling just isn't that. Scrolling shouldn't be our answer. It should always go back to seeking the Lord for wisdom. And I think when we take breaks, we often realize that everything we need is right in front of us. We don't need all of the information that's being fed to us. We were not designed to intake everything that is online. And I think that just, it's a tunnel vision way of viewing life. And I think the enemy loves that. I think he loves that we have our blinders on. I think he loves the fact that we're so distracted and so inward online. And it's a very subtle way of distancing us from the Lord and from our purpose. And while scrolling isn't inherently
Yeah.
bad, it is something that does create distraction, which is something that segues into a very distant relationship with the Lord. And the enemy loves that because you can still claim to be a Christian, you can still claim to love the Lord, and you can still really feel like you are showing up, honoring Him. But at the end of the day, it really is an internal thing, and that's what the enemy wants. He doesn't care what it looks like online, he cares about what it feels like and what it's doing to yourself. And I think I just finally grasped how different my heart was from what it was I was putting out. And not that my intent was wrong and not that what I was putting out didn't matter to me, but I was seeking so many things that were so inward when that should not have been the case. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned is just being online. I feel like scrolling is probably the most detrimental thing we can do. Showing up to produce content
Yeah.
can be very healthy and be very beneficial, but when you sit there and start scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, that's when I always found that I was, oh, discontent again, or comparing to this person again, or I thought my relationship with the Lord was better, and then I saw this other person who was just so wise or seemed so wise, and I was like, wait, but I'm not as wise as them, or I'm not looking at things the way they're looking at it, or I'm not as like chill about life and my kids and just so knowledgeable. And even that's such a thief of joy in your relationship with the Lord. So,
Emily, you have so much wisdom in this area, and I feel like this is going to be such an encouragement to so many people. There was a time that I was also chronically offline. It was probably more of like a 6 to 8 month window, but I
mm,
did not make one post, not one post. I sometimes would upload like little moments to stories because I do have family that lives like across the United States. And so just being able
yes.
to share what was going on with the kids, like I enjoy doing that. But I did not like post anything creatively. I just felt this pause from the spirit, and I obeyed, and I enjoyed that season so much, but it was also a very hard season for our family. There was a lot of things that happened back to back. And so I'm so grateful for that time that the Lord did call me to pull back, because I was able to be fully present when my family really needed me to be. And then when
Mm,
I was coming back online, I thought about all the things that you mentioned. I don't have any followers on TikTok, and I have like a old Instagram. Like, is this even
Yes.
going to be worth it? And am I sure that I should be creating this? And I remember like I was very self-conscious of where I was starting with my weight loss journey postpartum. And I'm like, do I really want to invite other people into this
Yes.
journey with me? Like, doing these whole habits challenges. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of embarrassed to do it. And here's the thing that I knew it was the Lord. I actually have makeup on tonight because I did look really tired earlier. And I'm like, I'm just going to throw some makeup on. But I wear makeup maybe once every 3 to 4 weeks. Like literally, I rarely wear makeup anymore because I just felt convicted that I was wearing makeup to cover things up. And I used to have fun putting on makeup, but I started wearing it because I would look in the mirror and be like, oh, I don't like the way I look. I have to try to look better. And even with makeup, I would look in the mirror and be like, I don't like the way I look. So anything on camera, I used to be like, oh my goodness, I would nitpick myself so much when
Hmm.
I would get online. And when I came back with no makeup. I came back in baggy t-shirts. I was overweight. I still am. I'm still on this weight loss journey, doing all these holy habits challenges. I'm sharing my highs and my lows. And I'm like, God, I know this is you because I would have never shown up online
Hmm.
like this in the past. And I would have had to make sure everything was aesthetically pleasing and my posts were planned out. And it didn't happen like that this time. And I think whether or not you are creating content for a purpose of trying to be like an influencer or just even a voice in the space to be able to be in leadership at all. I think there's whether it's that or there's a spot in your heart that you're just like social media is kind of like my outlet. It's where I go to decompress or what I do before bed so I can clear my mind. Whatever way you swing, I think it's so important to remember that we can only find everything as far as our worth, our peace, our joy
Hmm.
in the Lord. And when we pause and really take that in, it is so much more fulfilling, like you mentioned. So I love that you touched on all of that. For somebody who is not, and this is kind of like the point where I kind of want to wrap up a little bit and just give the encouragement to the non-creator mom who is just like, I'm on social media scrolling, but I know it's an issue. I want to get off. Emily, I read somewhere, maybe it was on your Substack, about how you were, is it knitting and you don't really know how to knit
Yes.
and you and your daughter are kind
Yes.
of learning together. Is that it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So share about that because this doesn't mean that you love puzzles, that you're into knitting, like that you have all these hobbies already. Saying, I'm going to put my phone down and be intentional can look like learning something. So talk about that.
Yeah. My daughter, it's so funny. Oh, I wanted to knit for a long time. My daughter, she became friends with our neighbor, and she's a college student, but she's been knitting since she was 12 years old. And so she sort of started teaching her how to knit. And I was like, this is perfect, a great way to start learning. And I never learned. So I sort of just kind of picked up on the things that she taught my 5-year-old daughter. And that's all that I do. I haven't done any research on how to like purl or do any of like the cast ons or cast offs or whatever they're called, but I really enjoy that content, watching people create things from nothing and like these cozy sweaters, and like maybe that'll be me one day. But I think just being able to fill your hands with something that keeps you away from filling it with your phone is such a good thing. It distracts you, but it's also you're watching as I'm knitting, I'm creating something. And so it's not nothing. You're watching progress and you feel proud of yourself and you're like, wow, I don't have any holes in this row. And it's just something that's mindless, but my daughter and I are able to do that together now, and it's so fun. She will grab a ball of yarn for her, grab a ball of yarn for me, and sit on the couch and say, Mom, do you want to knit together? And I think in those moments, it just really reminds me that presence, honestly, is probably one of the most holiest things we can do as a mom and as a daughter of Christ is to put our phone down and be available to the people in front of us because that is who the Lord put in front of us. And He did that on purpose. There's an intention, there's a reason why you are their parent, why you are their friend, why you are in their life. And I think our phones have just become such a distracting device that we think it has to be on us at all times. So I've been actually turning my phone on do not disturb every single day, and I told myself, because I'm a really bad texter, I told myself I will be intentional about texting people the moment I grab my phone. So it's intentional about the time I'm putting it down, but I'm also being intentional with my other relationships, keeping up with people because I'm not naive. We live in a world where people aren't going to call you all the time. Texting is so much easier to do. And so being able to be intentional with the people that I'm in front of at that moment and not always have to be available to other people was something that was big for me and something that has really made me feel a lot less pressure of having my phone on me altogether. But then just like I said, filling it with things in front of you that don't necessarily matter. Like I bought this little uh it's like a sticker printer, and I've been printing out photos and creating little books for my kids out of paper, like brown paper notebooks, no lines. So I will randomly put a picture in there, I'll write a little bit about it, and then I'll put it down. But it's something where it keeps my mind busy, it keeps me occupied, and it sort of like stimulates that part of my brain that feels like it needs that in that moment, instead of going to something that's outsourced or someone else's inspiration. I always found that I'd find inspiration online, but I would never do anything with it. And that came back to what I was doing earlier, where I would want to do the photo albums, I would want to knit, I would want to start a Substack, but I never did it because I was almost so inspired that I was drained and overwhelmed by all the inspiration that I just didn't know where to start. And so once you kind of shut off the world, you're able to, and it's uncomfortable. And I think that's important to be uncomfortable in the waiting process of it all. But it teaches you how to be you again in a weird way, but also
Yeah.
like it teaches you how to seek things physically and how to do those things physically instead of, oh, they did it that way, I need to do it that way. And I feel like as a creative, that part really speaks to me because you want I'm also an Enneagram 4 if you were like to look at the chart. And so I like to be an individual. I like to be unique. I like to do things differently than other people. And so it feels nice to be like, wow, it doesn't have to look like them or it doesn't have to be like them. I'm even looking at my house and looking at the like stains on the walls that I would normally freak out about because I'm filming a video. And I'm just like, you know what? I don't even care if that shows up in a video anymore, like you with your makeup or just showing up as is, because that people are seeking that out, seeking out authenticity. And whether that's online or at home, I was talking to my sister-in-law about that, even about Pinterest, because that was something that I always kept because it was so inspiring. But we both found that when we would brick our phone or be away from that for a while, we would find ourselves finding inspiration in other homes. I would go to her home and I'd find inspiration, but it was never comparison. It was, wow, I've never seen someone organize their books that way. Now that inspired me, oh, I could probably do it like this at my home. And that makes sense because it works that way and it actually makes sense that way. And so there's so much to learn outside of this little box. And I think we limit ourselves and we think because there is so much online, so much at our fingertips that's so easy to find, we don't allow ourselves the ability to stretch and grow and admire the things that we do and create on a more deeper level because we did it ourselves. It's
Yeah.
like this accomplished feeling where you're like, I did that, instead of I saw someone do that and I recreated it. And not that you can recreate things and that can be beautiful and that can be inspiring, but there is something so different about starting from scratch, learning it. And it sounds dramatic, but that's just how it is with the way that the internet really is in our lives. It's something that does have to be a dramatic shift in your life. And it's so freeing. I told my husband I felt so weightless during that time when I was offline. And it was just because nothing else mattered. My life was what I was focusing on, and it fueled me to care about the people in my present life. It fueled me to work on myself. I ate what I wanted to eat, and I made what I wanted to make. I decorated my house differently. It was so funny. I think about a week and a half in, I was moving things in my house and I was like, I never thought to move that to this spot, and I love that. And it's because you're just so honed in. And so, I don't know. I think I just really
Yeah.
enjoy that sense of creating from scratch and just that the acknowledgement that not everything is good to intake. Even if it's a good thing, good things can form bad habits and a bad mental state. And it's all about discernment, I think, and how much you're intaking, and we just have to be better. For some people, it really is just getting offline altogether. But for a lot of us, I think it's just being able to back away from it and create a true boundary and allow life to inspire us. God made so many beautiful things, so many inspiring things, so many inspiring people, and He brings them into your lives for a reason. We miss it all the time because we are so distracted.
Mhm. Oh, this is highly encouraging and also deeply convicting. I think that we covered like every area in the episode. I'm convicted even of like, wanting to do a better audit of how I'm spending my time online and what I could do more of offline. So I thank you again for coming on, for sharing your heart and for sharing encouragement to other people too, and giving them practical application that they can go and do in their own life. But I would love to have you pray us out as we end this episode.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Okay. Dear Lord, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with Courtney, and also just to those who open their ears to listen to what Courtney has to say and what I have to say on this topic. But Lord, more so what you have to say and our overflow from you. I pray, Lord, that not only do these words pierce through the hearts of the ones listening, but I pray that it really seeps in deep and that they are able to reflect and deeply be able to recenter and just discover the things that are really distracting them and be able to be real with themselves and get uncomfortable and allow room for you to show them things that need to be changed, or just that need to be better delegated in their lives to create a more deep relationship with you, Lord, and that their lives may become the overflow of the things that you have for them that inspire others because it is from you. I pray, Lord, that in this age of social media and just high tech, that we learn to seek your wisdom and discernment, and that through that we are able to live more present lives with those around us that you have given us the opportunity to minister to. We so often see the social media realm as a ministry, and it can be. It's such a beautiful tool, but I pray, Lord, that we take that more intentionally and on a deeper level and start living that outside and let the internet be the overflow of those things. Thank you, Lord, again for this conversation and for the convictions and encouragement. I pray, Lord, that it continues to encourage others as they listen, and as Courtney continues to share her love for you and all the wisdom that she has learned from you. I pray all these things in your beautiful name. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Thank you for tuning in to the Mission for More podcast. I am so grateful to have had Emily on as a guest. If you would like to follow her, she is Emily Styx on Instagram and TikTok, and then at the Still House on Substack. I highly recommend you subscribe to her Substack. Great content there as well. I will be having another guest next week, so I can't wait for you to tune in. Make sure you like and subscribe. Leave a comment if this touched you in any way. Let me know what your questions are. If you have ideas for off-screen activities, let's put those in the comments and encourage one another there as well. And we will see you back here next week.